So we brought in, folks may know Socket Sony's team here, the New Orleans Worker Center for Racial Justice. They have that guest worker line. So I asked them to go and talk to these workers to find out if they are guest workers. They actually did. They went out with our organizers and they told us that they were workers from Puerto Rico and they chose to live this way. So we told them that was the line the company gave them, you know, Puerto Rican, you know, who's a complete U.S. citizen, wouldn't have to live in a trailer with 8 other guys and have deducted from his paycheck his plane ticket. But we are now partnering to talk about folding that trailer park into the guest workers' work. But, you know, it's still an idea there. We have not gone back with them a second time, and there's nothing agreed upon. We can tell that it's an election year.
Who are they working for, Janet King?
Janet Care.
Janet Care.
Janet Care has a contract with the city. No, not with the. Yeah, they're in the schools in the evening because the custodians were privatized and have Aramark, and then Aramark did subcontracts to lots of mom and pop shops, and so they get some schools. They're a subcontract to Aramark. They also are in ExxonMobil. And if you guys, you know, want to organize them, I'll get you the address of the trailer park, and we can talk. Yeah.
We'll send that to Dave Butler.
I know. Here's the catch with the guest workers, though. They come for 2 to 6 months at a time, and then they're sent home.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to build a kind of a sustainable organization because, you know, and then when they're here the whole time, they thought they had such a different trip planned for them. They just want to go home. They just hate being, you know, I mean, they show pictures of hotels back in Bolivia, and they get on a plane and they end up in a trailer, and if they quit their job, they're deported, you know, so it's not a good, yeah.
What do you think will happen if Obama doesn't win?
If Obama doesn't win, what we are told is, up until now, a lot of the attacks on labor in Wisconsin and Ohio and even in Indiana, SEIU has not really been hit numbers-wise in the ways that, say, AFSCME or some of the other unions are. If Obama doesn't win, SEIU is projecting maybe 500,000 members lost because there'll be Medicaid cuts, and Medicaid pays for many of our workers. Many of our low-wage workers are home attendants. It would devastate our home care. I mean, people would, all those old people wouldn't have anyone, and the sick people wouldn't have anyone taking care of them at home.
Yeah, they'd be dying.
They'd be dying or shuttled into nursing homes or wards of the state, and then the workers who did take care of them would all be gone. So SEIU is really very, very concerned about Mitt Romney winning and cutting this. Because this would really, this would hit a blow to our membership more than any other cuts so far.
One of the biggest things that I think I'm hearing you say is the awareness of people to even know that the staff doesn't get paid vacation or sick days or anything like that. What do you see as the most effective way to bring awareness? Because there's strength in numbers, and to get that out there, I have a feeling that many people will be appalled by it, but they just don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good question because, you know, a few years ago when we were doing the fight, when we brought it to Baton Rouge, we brought it to Bessie, to the Board of Elementary Secondary Education, we were pretty much chased, our workers and I were, again, I'm exaggerating only a little, chased out of the hearing room with sticks. You know, Paul Vallis was just apoplectic because we were a union. We weren't even talking about teachers' unions and tenure and all of that, but we were a union and everything we said, and so it felt like there were no friendly folks that even heard the story that weren't going to be there for us. That's changed now. Kira Orange-Jones, who's on the Bessie board, who is a Teach for America alum and ran Teach, I don't think she still runs Teach for America here. She is very committed to helping our workers. Her mother is a union member. Her grandmother was a Puerto Rican immigrant in New York.
Now that's Puerto Rican from Puerto Rico.
From Puerto Rico, yes, not from Bolivia. And so Kira is very committed to it. Now there are more progressive charter school leaders who understand the issue a little more. So today has been 30 days since Aramark took over the custodial contract, and they decided they had the workers had a probationary period. We're talking about workers who've been in these schools since, you know, the day the schools opened post-Katrina, and they fired 13 workers. When the workers asked why, Aramark said, we don't have to tell you why. And so obviously the lawyers have prepared the case, but we're going to go public. We have an emergency meeting tomorrow with those 13 workers. We're going to have 50 workers to 100 workers on Saturday. We're going to be on WBOK. We're going to do the press. We're probably going to show up at every public meeting, every school board meeting, every charter school board meeting. We're going to be blogging. We have the Lens committed to writing a story. So we're very excited about this. It's almost a gift. Aramark gave us a gift by firing 13 workers today. We think the community is ready to hear those worker stories. Yes.
What about actually taking the information down into Central and South America and saying, this is actually what you're going to get in New Orleans, and
Yeah.
you can ask the guys that are coming back off this last trip. And then by doing that sort of outreach, we'll have sort of an idea of what maybe they're looking for when they're coming for a job.
The Guest Workers Alliance has done that. They've actually done work in the Philippines and India, and trying to contact some of the agencies and the people at the agencies. It's nascent stage right now, but I know that that's been a strategy that they've done.
What do? They just pick a new country? I mean, to explore?
Well, no, it's
As long as they get to come here,
where the workers come thinking it's a different experience, yeah. It's interesting. I think, for example, post-Katrina, a lot of the school teachers were from the Philippines on this program, and even in Baton Rouge now, there's still a bunch of Filipino teachers who are brought in. I think 200 of them. When they first decided, and they talked about building all these new hospitals down here, there was a whole lot of talk about workforce development. Oh, it's going to create all these jobs, and we're going to have a path from certified nursing assistants to RN, and it's going to be this investment. It's going to build, good jobs here in town. And at this point, there's been nothing done around workforce development at all. And so all of a sudden, those Filipino nurses look really attractive. And so we're already starting to look at, they're going to basically say there's no one in New Orleans who's qualified to do the work, right? How many times do we hear that? All the time, right? And so just like there's no one in Baton Rouge who can mop the ExxonMobil floor, they have to bring people in from Bolivia to do it. There's no one in, so I think that it'll continue. It continues until we can stop it, until we can build the power and get elected officials to understand that that is just ugliness we won't tolerate.
The City Council, on a 4-3 vote here in New Orleans, passed a measure recently that I'd love to hear your point of view on about whether or not that might help. You might give some background. I'm sure you all were involved.
Sure. Yeah, we were there. So the City Council around 2 months ago passed responsible contractor legislation, which basically said if there is a company that already has a contract with the city, and if they have to report to the city attorney if they have been found guilty, had any kind of finding against them for violation of any labor infraction. So if they, if the Department of Labor, if workers filed a claim, or at NLRB or something. Originally, the language was much stronger. It was based on legislation that passed in many cities in Massachusetts. It was responsible bidder. It was that you couldn't get hired if you had that. So if you wanted to do business with the city, then you had to prove that you weren't violating other workers in other jobs that you had, other workers' rights. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the the bidder part passed. We got the contractor. It's still a lot of questions around enforcement, but it's we think it's a first step in showing that the public doesn't believe you should be able to not pay minimum wage and still get a city contract, or keep a city contract, I should say, because people already have to have the contract. So.
And that would be the penalty if people could lose the contract.
Yes, it's weak penalties. You have a period of time, I think it's 3 months or something, to show that you made whole. So you could then pay that worker that stolen overtime or minimum wage that you didn't, and you could retain the contract.
Have you had to handle any